So if you ask me, I think the Houston Rockets are at this potential boiling point where some wild things could happen. For one, their owner is losing a lot of money because so much of his wealth is tied into things that are not open right now. There was a report that he's losing like $1 million a day daily from restaurants. That was 2 months ago, so there you are. There's the fact that Mike D'Antoni is on the last year of his contract and the extension talks did not go well. And there was, of course, the Daryl Morey China tweet controversy, and with all that going on top of the fact that the team itself has been widely scrutinized, and we've seen that pressure sometimes mean something in the team's decision-making, whether it's the right decision or not. But also, this team could just lose in the second round. And so it's like, well, what if there's pressure for, at the least, getting under the luxury tax? What if there's also not pressure to move on from D'Antoni? Would Daryl Morey's job be in question? I don't know. I mean, he did sign a 5-year extension with Houston, and maybe more than any other general manager, the on-court product is so ingrained into Daryl Morey's basketball beliefs and all that. And D'Antoni was kind of an extension of that. So just seeing one of those guys go, if you made me pick with just one, I think it would be D'Antoni, could really just make a huge difference, especially because there's rumors of Tom Thibodeau being linked to the Rockets. I mean, if Tom Thibodeau shows up, you can forget all the stuff about going small ball. I mean, we're going to one big guy all the time, potentially even two big guys sometimes if Thibodeau hasn't updated his styles. And whether that happens or not, I think the fact that there's rumors out there about it, I think is enough to really speculate on some things. That, and of course, what the hell else am I going to talk about right now? So yeah, it just seems like it could go in a lot of different directions. I mean, if we talk about the D'Antoni thing a little bit more, is there any coach who'd be willing to be as daring as D'Antoni in terms of the small, super small ball, ISOing Harden and Westbrook every single possession, telling the rest of the guys in the team, yeah, you're not going to touch the ball besides shooting open threes pretty much? Eric Gordon gets a little bit of play calling for him, but for the most part, that's pretty much it. It's ISO, shooters around, we get it, right? I don't think any other coach is going to be about that life. And because this team is so ingrained into the GM and the coach's thing over the past few years, that in itself would be very different. I mean, even if it was Kenny Atkinson, a guy who I think is a pretty modern-day coach, but just simply going back to one big guy, I mean, we saw the difference with Westbrook, with having Capella on the team and not having Capella on the team, you know what I mean? So, I think all that's interesting. To mention it again, if it was Thibodeau, then it would really get interesting. But to talk about Daryl Morey as well, because if things were going to get really wild, then Daryl Morey would get fired, which again, like, I do think there's a better chance of D'Antoni being gone than Morey. But if it was going to be Morey, and I think this would stem from the China thing and the fact that the guys made a lot of moves, and I believe the Rockets owner has had a thing about championship or bust or whatever. That is something I've read. So if it was going to be Morey, then I officially would have no idea what would come next. I mean, you could see almost an entire roster reconstruction. I mean, some new GM might say, well, PJ Tucker's 35 and can't dribble. Why do I want this guy on my team? I don't really think Westbrook or Harden would be touched, but still, the Rockets are such a unique team that I feel like even just making a couple changes just could make them way different, you know, especially if you put a big man back in that whole equation. But to talk about Morey a little bit more is the fact that if they got a new GM, would he be better than Morey? Would he even have much to work with? I mean, they just traded a whole bunch of draft picks for Westbrook. I think that would be interesting as well, is if the owner saw the Westbrook CP trade and then he saw that they lose in round one or something, which is possible. I know Rockets fans don't want to hear that one, but it's possible. It's possible for round two. I don't think they could beat the Clippers or the Lakers. Would he not be like, well, you traded a bunch of stuff and you took on a player and we got worse? Like, if you've already got an owner who's feeling some sort of way because of the money he's losing and all that, and you throw in a disappointing playoff loss, that could be it for your GM, And then, depending on what the hell the Rockets would want in their next general manager, I don't know. I mean, again, when you don't have a million draft picks to work with, that hurts your chances, but they still have something. And I guess the other thing is maybe Morey would still be on, but there'd be even more pressure from the owner to make a move. I mean, we've seen Morey get reckless enough with the Westbrook trade and the rumor of the Jimmy Butler move. I mean, the Rockets do still have, they got a 2022 first and a 2023. I don't think they could trade the 2023 because of the Stepien rule. Is that enough to get you some significant player? I don't know. I mean, I feel like the one dude they would want to trade is probably Eric Gordon, because he's been not so awesome since they extended him. And part of that is injury, but another part of it is just hasn't been that great, And he's 31. So would you be able to get off of him? And would you, what would that really even get you? I don't know, but just looking at real trade assets this Rockets team has, it's pretty slim. They've traded a lot of stuff, and again, that's why I feel like the owner could look at all that and be like, well, you've made all these moves, and here we are. And I mentioned James Harden a little bit earlier. I will mention him now. I don't think a Harden trade would be a thing, so don't think I'm going up that tree. But James Harden is 30. And if all of this stuff is going to happen, this restructuring of things, and, is there a world in which Morey and D'Antoni are back next season? Even if this team doesn't have some amazing playoff run that would probably end in a finals win. I mean, it's possible, sure, but there seems to be a lot of noise. And the fact that Harden would be 31 next year, it just adds a little extra layer of something into all that, this extra pressure of, well, I want to make some changes, but I don't want this to be a feeling out process. Like, we don't have too many years left of Harden being a great player. I mean, we don't know. Harden has been extremely healthy throughout his career. He barely ever misses games, which is something that I think he should get a little bit more credit for. I mean, people pile on James Harden for, let's be honest, for ridiculous things a little too much. I mean, I think he's had some disappointing playoff finishes, but good Lord, sometimes with the criticism of James Harden. And yet, with all the talk about load management and how people have a problem with that, Harden never gets praised for showing up basically every game since he got drafted. And that's a pretty good sign that you're going to age well. I think we have to include Westbrook in this whole thing as well. I mean, he's locked in for a long time, and the how well will Westbrook age conversation, it's a little more different than Harden. I mean, Westbrook has been very healthy most of the time as well, but the efficiency is still a question. I mean, he got more efficient this year. He athletically is holding up very well. I mean, he's still one of the most athletic guys in the league. So there's a chance that Harden and Westbrook can play into their mid-30s and be really, really good. But I think if an owner is going to decide to clean house a little bit, you got to take that into account. And you gotta be willing to open up the floodgates of potentially getting a bad GM or keeping Daryl Morey on, but maybe you get a coach that you think can work out for Harden and Westbrook, but then he really doesn't, and then you've lost like another year or two of Harden and Westbrook's primes or whatever. Like, it's all a whole bunch of stuff, and it's centering around a team that has been very successful, but it hasn't happened all the way to a finals, and owners can sometimes get a little whacked out with that whole thing and the rumors, and yeah. All of this to once again say I think the Rockets could end up looking very different depending on if we get playoffs and all that. I mean, sure, any team can maybe look different at any time, but I think Houston, it's a different level. I mean, you look at the Nuggets, as far as why I said the Nuggets, because I think Mike Malone is an iffy guy for the job. Like, is he really the coach for that team? I don't know. But the Nuggets' playstyle is not 100% influenced by Mike Malone having some super unique idea of basketball the way it is with Mike D'Antoni, right? So if Mike Malone gets fired and he gets replaced with whoever, yeah, the Nuggets could look different, but it's not going to look like a completely different team. Whereas if Mike D'Antoni is no longer the coach of Houston, the players might be pretty damn similar, but the way they play could be very different. And yeah, I'm repeating myself. We'll see what happens. We need basketball for these things to actually be answered, because until then, we're just kind of making stuff up. I mean, I'm doing what I can, but eventually I'm going to hit a wall of like, what the hell am I doing? But until then, we can speculate on Houston. So yeah.